Representative Ingen, would you like to move House File 327 before the committee?
Yes, I would, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Representative Ingen, the fiscal note came back on your bill showing it has costs, so we'll be laying over File 237 for the possible inclusion in the committee omnibus. Representative Ingen, I believe you also have a author's amendment, DE1. Please explain your amendment.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Before I get to my DE1 amendment, I want to kind of outline for the committee just what we're doing here. Here at the legislature, it's no surprise that we all handle hundreds, if not thousands, of papers throughout the course of a week. And we don't have to worry about touching a piece of paper and having it potentially put us in a hospital, or worse, kill us. Our DOC staff has been doing that every single day for quite some time now. And we should act to try to quell the nearly double violations for illegal drugs that have been intook into our DOC facilities. The mail is the #1 source where this is all coming from, by the way. And in 2022, there were 410 violations. 2024, there were 811. And we can see many instances where more than several officers were impacted throughout the course of a single week alone. And so instead of just addressing this via a mail intake system where we're checking to see if there are illicit drugs within those pieces of mail, we should also increase those penalties to a felony level for knowingly introducing this into a DOC facility. And with that, I will answer any questions you guys might have.
So we're back to DE1. Could you explain DE1?
Yes, so this actually came from DFL House Research, so I want to thank you guys. We did have a slight issue with the original language, which would have, it could have been interpreted to say that a person arrested or booked into jail who has contraband on them could be subjected to either the gross misdemeanor penalty for possession or contraband of the felony law for intent to distribute. So it's kind of a catch-22 in that sense. So we wanted to clarify that language.
Lead Moeller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Ingen. I know we had spotted some things and our staff worked out this amendment. I do still have some questions about the breadth of this amendment. And I think for purposes of now, it's fine if we adopt it, and then I can speak to those questions, and hopefully we can work together on a solution. Thanks.
Any more questions on DE1? All those in favor of DE1 say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Amendment carried. There's another amendment at the table, DE2. What's in? The A2, I'm sorry. So it's okay, we'll hear the testimony on the bill and then take A2. Representative Ingen, do you have any other further testimony on the bill? Do you have testifiers?
I believe so. Sheriff Wise? Yeah. Awesome.
Welcome back, Sheriff Weiss. Please state your name and begin your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Brad Wise. I'm the Sheriff of Anoka County. So good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today on behalf of the Minnesota Sheriff's Association. I represent all 87 elected sheriffs across the state. I appreciate to highlight the importance of House File 327 and why it's critical to ensuring the safety and security of our county jails. The introduction of contraband, whether weapons, particularly drugs, or other dangerous materials, poses a serious and immediate threat to everyone inside a correctional facility. This includes detention staff, inmates, medical personnel, even visitors. Sheriffs and jail administrators work diligently to prevent contraband from entering the facility, but current penalties do not adequately deter individuals from attempting to smuggle in illegal or dangerous items. When contraband makes its way into a facility, it can fuel violence, disrupt operations, endanger staff, and facilitate criminal activity within the jail. House File 327 strengthens the penalties for introducing contraband, sending a clear message these actions will not be tolerated. Elevating certain offenses from gross misdemeanors to felonies is a necessary step to hold offenders accountable. and provide stronger deterrence. Increasing penalties for introducing dangerous weapons and illicit substances ensures that those who seek to compromise the safety of our jails face meaningful consequences. County jails are already high-risk environments, and ensuring they remain secure is not just a public safety issue, it is about protecting the individuals in our custody, as well as the men and women who serve our communities in these facilities every day. Strengthening contraband laws enhance our ability to maintain order, prevent violence, and keep our personnel and inmates safe. The Minnesota Sheriff's Association strongly supports House File 327 and urges its passage to help ensure our county jails remain secure. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sheriff. Are there any other questions for Representative Engen or Sheriff Weiss? Lead Moeller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I did have a question as to whether or not this was intended to apply to the DOC correctional facilities as well, or is your intent, Representative Engen, just to apply to the local jails?
Representative Engen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Lead Mueller. My intention is for it to apply to both.
Lead Moeller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I was alerted to the fact that there is a separate statute related to DOC. It's 243.55, where I think it's already a felony to bring in contraband to a correctional facility. And I don't know, and I think this was maybe an issue we brought to your attention before I knew about this statute. So I'm not trying to be confusing here, but I just learned of this statute. And I know that the Commissioner of Corrections is here, and I wonder if it would be helpful to hear from him what they have for the DOC facilities now. And also, I know they've purchased some new equipment to help address some of the problems that you have identified, at least with respect to their facilities.
Yeah.
Commissioner Snell, would you? And Commissioner Snell, I know Lead Moeller talked about the steps you've taken. If you could keep that, I plan to have a hearing dedicated to that later on. So if you could talk about the mail mitigation briefly, but we'll cover that more. But Mr. Snell, say your full name and begin answering the question.
Mr. Chair, members, Paul Schnell, the Commissioner at the Department of Corrections. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this. I also want to thank Representative Engen for bringing this forward. There is currently a statute that speaks specifically to the introduction of controlled substances, weapons, firearms, weapons, or explosives of any kind into the facility, which is a 10-year felony under the existing DOC language, versus the 2-year felony here, as I understand one of the key differences. And then there is a gross misdemeanor provision that speaks more specifically to bringing in contraband, specifically alcohol, into a facility. So I think that's one of the key differences, and I think there could be some mechanisms of merging some of this language as we go forward. The one thing I would say, and while we have been really heavily focused on trying to ensure accountability, and in 2024, the Department of Corrections referred 24 cases for criminal prosecution to local prosecutors as a result of investigations that took place. In many instances where we do not have evidence to meet the criminal threshold, we then pursue those cases through the disciplinary process. But one of the things that was a major concern, obviously, for staff, and we became aware of, was that much of the drugs, especially the synthetic drugs that were coming in on paper, were being sent in through the mail. As a result of the sickness to many of our staff who were impacted by this, we introduced and did an emergency procurement process to hire a third-party contractor who now receives mail, scans that mail, photocopies it, and then sends it to the facilities for staff to distribute. The contractor has facilities set up specifically to meet this need, and in a safe environment, so that their staff, it's all hooded settings and those sorts of things to be able to do this. And I will say that, that this has been significant, and to your point, Mr. Chair, I won't belabor this, but I can say that we've seen roughly a 2/3 reduction in the number of incidents of suspected illegal drug possession in the facilities or intoxication in the facilities from this use. And so it does show some indication that it is working.
Yes, Chair. Commissioner Sal, yes, I did meet with many members of your staff that have reported the increase in manufacturing a hooch in the cells, but much less in the drugs. Lead Moeller?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think maybe trying to figure out how your bill would interact with the DOC's bill would be an important next step. And then the other thing I would say is, I just think it's still a little broad. If you look at line 1.9, and it refers to cell having the meaning given in section 15201 subdivision 15A. I don't have that right up in front of me, but it's a pretty broad definition of cell. It's like possess with intent to sell, barter for, exchange. That coupled with the fact that contraband is defined on line 1.6, referencing statute 15201 subdivision 4, is also a very large list. And so I guess I could foresee a situation where maybe someone who's incarcerated has prescription medication for some kind of control that's technically a controlled substance and barters that for a candy bar, and then that person would be guilty of a felony. And so I think there's maybe a little more refinement, especially trying to get at the issue that you've identified, which is a real issue. And I understand that jails don't have the ability to have that same kind of equipment that the DOC has. And so maybe there's some way to refine it a little bit so it's not quite so broad.
Was that a question, Lead Moeller?
It's just a comment.
I just want to make sure I got it right. Representative Engen.
Thank you for that, Lead Moeller, as well as Commissioner Schnell. My intent is also to get at the folks who are sending this into our facilities. It's not just the folks who are taking it in, an incarcerated individual. So that's where we're seeing a lot of this. And I want to read for you guys here from KSTP. They found a case in Lino Lakes, where I represent, that federal and local officers broke up a conspiracy involving several incarcerated and outside network folks who were sending this in. And they discovered strips of Suboxone mixed into the glue of some envelopes. And then in a different case here, we had either a corrections officer or food service workers who had been delivering THC gummies, ecstasy pills, and other contraband into two inmates at the Minnesota Sex Offender Facility in Moose Lake. So this isn't just a case where it's the folks on the inside, people on the outside who are providing that supply. And we want to get after that as well and say, no, we're not going to put up with this anymore.
Thank you, Representative Engen. And yeah, I believe, speaking to the thing, we had, looking at a situation, it was obvious that there was some pretty sophisticated means that there was the ink in books, and it wasn't just letters that were being sent in. Lead Moeller's got concerns over the conflicting, and what do we do with that, and what happens with the existing conflicting laws. Is there House nonpartisan that could clarify for Lead Moeller on that question?
Mr. Chair and members.
Mr. Diebel.
Yes, I think since we're working on this, it should be reconciled now rather than enacting two conflicting provisions. Right. So I think we have the opportunity now to fix the problem because you have the one statute that governs the DOC, and the definition used in the amendment is broad enough that it would include DOC facilities. So it should be, now's the time to fix that.
So we need to get this fixed before it goes any further.
Chair.
Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I might suggest to Representative Engen that just the DOC be removed altogether and just focus, because it seems like that's covered pretty well under 243.55. I'll note that if this bill went into effect, it would actually have a lower penalty than the existing statute for introducing contraband into a correctional facility, 2-year felony instead of a 10-year felony. It would actually have a higher penalty, though, for bringing beer or alcohol into a prison. Right now, that's a gross misdemeanor. This would make that a felony. So maybe the simple thing is just, at least for consideration, to kind of say state correctional facilities we're doing pretty well on, but there are concerns with jails. And I've actually charged, I can think of several cases I've charged, in fact, where folks have tried to send in drugs into jails, and certainly a significant concern. But I think we want to focus on the particular problem that we're trying to address, so just for consideration.
Comment, Representative Ingen? Representative Whitty? My question's answered. Any other questions for the testifiers on this? Lead Moeller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry. So I think there's, just to be clear, there's 2 issues. One is the DOC issue, and then the other one that I had just made a comment on before, and Representative Ingen, you talked about people from the outside bringing things in, and I agree, and I think your bill covers that with line 1.16 to 1.19. The portion that I'm hoping that you're willing to work on still is 1.20 to 1.22. That's where I think it's a little broad for people who are incarcerated, like I gave the example of trading a prescription pill that they're getting for a candy bar. I don't think that should be a felony. And so that's the area that I really hope we can work on together to narrow a little bit.
Representative Ingen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Lead Moeller. I appreciate the legal perspective into this. We want to do this right. We want to provide those protections for our COs who are going through a tough time right now. And actually, I'll refer you guys to a story that happened 3 weeks ago in my cube at the COB. I met with 3 different corrections officers, and one gal, she had been working there for 20-some years in Stillwater, and woke up in a hospital bed because she was exposed to something, and to this day she doesn't know what it is. And her workers' comp didn't cover the expenses for the hospital stay and everything else that she had missed because of work. So we do need to do something about this. That much is 100%, it seems to be mutually understood on both sides of the table here, but I want to work with you on this. Let's get this language right, and then we can get this done. Thank you.
Okay, well, we will now revert back to the A2 amendment. Who is offering the A2 amendment?
That's me, Chair.
Representative Curran.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Representative Engen. I think we've had a lot of really good discussion. This is an issue in our correctional facilities. Lead Moeller brought up the very real issue of people having access to prescription medications in jail and correctional facilities. The A2, what the A2 really does is bring House File 294 that's authored by Rep. Hanson J. Just incorporating practices to ensure that folks who go through intake are provided with the same medications that they're prescribed unless a nurse says otherwise. Just highlighting, there's an issue with some contraband coming into facilities because people are worried maybe they won't have the right prescriptions or they just happen to have them on them and, didn't go through the right process, et cetera. So just, want to highlight that there is also an issue where people maybe don't have the right access to medication and health services. And there's all sorts of ways and reasons that medications might come into a facility outside of the sanctioned ways that that's supposed to happen, whether the intention is nefarious or not. And including too, you mentioned protecting our COs, and I absolutely agree. And I think this bill gets also at another great angle of when those, off chance cases occur that there are COs or other staff involved in the contraband and sort of disseminating those things, that we're addressing that problem seriously too. So I see this as a holistic approach. I do understand that there's interest in maybe giving HF327 its own hearing, and I know there's more work to be done on this bill specifically. Just wanted to highlight that and appreciate the multifaceted approach to this. With that, Chair, I will withdraw this amendment today.
The A2 amendment has been withdrawn. Member, any further discussion on this bill? Closing remarks, Representative Engen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members, for the discussion. Thank you for taking a look at this and helping me refine it, make it a better bill. Notwithstanding the previous A2 amendment, which was withdrawn, I don't think that this is a matter of medications that are, that people are going without. When you introduce a meth-soaked Winnie the Pooh greeting card into our DOC facilities, and our corrections officers are being exposed to that and then being sent to the hospital at the staggering rates that they are currently, we got to do something about it. And if increasing penalties deters this action from taking place at all, even from one person who might be sending it in, then I think it's worth it. So I appreciate the time and I appreciate the discussion.
House File 327 as amended is laid over. Thank you, Representative Engen, to you and your testifiers.